So you've been working hard to save and is now looking to invest your hard-earned money. But where to start? You ask your coworkers and they talk your ears off about cryptocurrency. You call your brother-in-law and he says investing in tech companies is a sure way to become a billionaire. You ask your mom and she says, why would you go and do a silly thing like that? It's overwhelming and frustrating. You worked hard to save your money, but don't know where to start when it comes to investing. What if I was to tell you that there is just one investment you need to know that will solve your dilemma? Hi, my name is Tae from Financial Tortoise, a channel dedicated to creating personal finance content for the sandwich generation. Investing feels intimidating to most people. It conjures up images of complex financial models and jargons that normal people don't understand. Enter your solution, Vanguard's VTSAX. When I started in my investing journey, I was overwhelmed by all the options out there. How do I find a winning stock? Can I research the best companies to invest in? What is a mutual fund and why are there so many of them? In this video, I want to share with you our one-stop investment, the Vanguard's VTSAX index fund that has helped us reach financial security and continues to grow our net worth. Before we start, I've time-stamped each section, so if there's any part of the video that you'd like to skip, don't worry, it's all right there in the description. Let's get started. Number 1, who is Vanguard? If you watch any of my other videos, you know that I'm a big fan of Vanguard and their products. My two primary reasons are due to the company's incentive structure and their specialization in high-quality index funds. Mr. Jack Bogle founded Vanguard in 1975. When he started the company, he created it with a quite unique structure, a company that is client-owned and operated at cost. So what does this mean? Most companies have different stakeholders that they have to serve. If it's a publicly traded company, it needs to serve its shareholders as well as the customers that it sells its products to. If it is a private company, it needs to serve its owner as well as its customers. It must create value to both groups. If things are going well, this is not a problem. Customers get the widget they want at a good value, and the shareholders get the profit they've been expecting. However, when times are tough, we see the tension that this model can create. In the case of investment companies, in order to create more profit for the owner or the shareholders, we often see them passing on those expenses to the customers with higher fees. Vanguard, on the other hand, has a model where because the investors, the fund, the customers, are also the owners of Vanguard, everyone's interest aligns perfectly. Technically, Vanguard is incentivized to provide value to only one group of people that plays the role of both the customer and the owner. Vanguard is also the pioneer of low-cost index funds. In 1976, Jack Bogle launched the world's first index fund, the S&P index. And this concept of index fund has really taken a hold of mainstream investing in the last few decades. For those of you hearing about an index fund for the first time, an index fund is an investment that basically tracks the stock market. You might have heard of terms like S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Instead of trying to pick stocks and manage assets, the index simply tracks the stock market. There is minimal human element involved, which also makes these investments available at a very low cost. Index funds also perform extremely well over time compared to actively managed funds, regardless of which asset class you're in. I have a video that explains why you want to avoid financial advisors and actively managed funds that you can check out here. These days, almost all major investment firms offer some variation of index funds, Fidelity, Schwab, etc. However, given the aligned company incentive structure and the consistent low expense ratio, Vanguard is still my number one investment firm.
You are my number one. Yes, you are my number one.
What is VTSAX Index Fund? VTSAX is Vanguard's total stock market index fund. Okay, you're probably asking, what does that mean? It may sound complicated, but don't let the fancy name intimidate you. Just know that it is an index of every publicly traded company in the United States. At the time of this video, there are approximately 3,700 companies being represented in this fund. In essence, by purchasing a share of VTSAX, you're essentially buying a piece of every publicly traded company in the United States. Ever heard of Apple, Amazon, Johnson & Johnson? If you purchase VTSAX, you're essentially buying a piece of all these companies. Market, thus the index normally goes up. Since the recession of 2009, the market has done fairly well. In the last 10 years, VTSAX had an average return of almost 15% annually. That means that if you had invested $1,000 10 years ago, it would have grown to over $4,000 from just the compounding growth alone. 4 times your original investment, and you did nothing except invest in VTSAX. The fund is self-cleansing. Because all companies are working hard to create value for its shareholders, there is an endless upward potential for the stocks to go up. Who could have imagined Amazon or Facebook to have gotten as big as they have? However, the lowest a company can go is $0. It can't fall any further. When a company fails, it will go bankrupt and disappear essentially, making its stock price $0. But there are always hundreds of new companies coming in to take the reign. Sounds pretty awesome, don't you think? How many of your friends can say they own a piece of every publicly traded company in the US and are able to tap into the phenomenal growth of the stock market to grow their wealth? Is VTSAX index fund better than buying single stocks? The simple answer is yes. Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, had a great quote about beating the market. I've been in the business 61 years and I can't do it. I've never met anybody who can do it. I never met anybody who's met anybody who can do it. People naturally think that they're smarter than they actually are. I have a big problem in this area, and my wife has to put me in my place daily. God bless her. We think we can easily spot good companies from the bad ones. We all have a friend, a relative, or a neighbor that knows what the best investment is. They'll say, oh my God, Tesla is the future. It's no-brainer. You should buy Tesla stocks. But the reality is no one knows. The rising star today could become bankrupt tomorrow, and the struggling company today could become the industry standard in the future. Anyone remember Blockbuster? Or how about Circuit City? And people forget that Apple actually went through a pretty rough patch in the 90s. If you can't pick winning stocks, the best bet is to bet on the whole market. Buy VTSAX and hold them forever. Is VTSAX index fund better than actively managed mutual funds? Another simple answer. Yes. When you read big newspapers or magazines dedicated to financial advice, they oftentimes list the top mutual funds or the top performing mutual funds of the year. And if you read further, the article goes on to explain how this amazing fund manager was able to produce ridiculous returns on his or her fund year after year. However, what it forgets to mention is how expensive these active managers are. And the way they pay for these expensive managers are by charging the investor outrageous fees. You can easily compare these expenses by looking at the expense ratio. Expense ratio is the annual fee that all funds charge their shareholders for basic administrative and operating expenses. The average expense ratio for actively managed mutual funds ranges anywhere from 0.5% to 1%. Now, compare that to VTSAX's expense ratio, stunning 0.04%. That's almost 10 times less than the cheapest actively managed mutual fund. Even when compared to other passively managed funds, whose average ratio is about 0.2%, VTSAX is still 4 to 5 times cheaper. When we consider the fees that these actively managed mutual funds charge, even if they outperform the index by a few percentage points, the extra expense ratio wipes out any advantage. In addition, I'm sure we've all seen tons of ads regarding these actively managed funds. But when was the last time you saw an ad for a low-cost index fund? I like to believe that Vanguard would rather keep the expense to its investors low and not waste its money on ads. While other companies are spending hard-earned investor money on promoting their funds to gain more business and to fund their highly paid active managers. Keep it simple and offer the best passive index, VTSAX. Now that you understand why VTSAX is the best investment vehicle out there, go out there and get yourself some VTSAX and start growing your wealth. If you'd like to learn more about investing, I highly encourage you to read J.L. Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth. He goes more in depth about index funds and VTSAX and explains it so much better than I did in this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you found value from this video, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any of my other upcoming videos. I firmly believe that being part of the Sandra generation doesn't have to mean financial stress. With careful planning and preparation, we can thrive during this stage of life. Help me spread the knowledge. Thank you again. I'll see you in my next video.